All of us who grew up with console gaming absolutely missed out on a few of our favorite titles simply because we couldn't justify buying the platform they were on. For example, no matter how much I wanted to, I never owned a Neo Geo and I didn't own a Sega Saturn until long after it was fashionable. So it just killed me that I couldn't play Samurai Shodown 2 or Dragon Force at home. It really sucked having our friends tell us about how much fun these games were, only to never get to play them for ourselves. It was so frustrating. Well, one of those games for me was Star Ocean: The Last Hope. This was because, much to my discontent, Tri-Ace and Square Enix broke from tradition and decided to publish it on the Xbox 360 rather than the PlayStation 3 as I had expected. And the Xbox 360 was where it stayed, at least at first. Apparently, a lot of others had the same problem I did, so Square Enix eventually brought it to the PlayStation 3 in 2010. This version was called Star Ocean: The Last Hope International, which even had some bonus content. But was Star Ocean: The Last Hope all it was hyped up to be? Before I assess the game and answer that question, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more retro gaming content. Even though it came out 7 years after Star Ocean Till the End of Time, combat in Star Ocean: The Last Hope is really quite similar to that one outside of a few adjustments. The first, and most significant I think, is that the game went back to traditional 4-character parties rather than the 3-character parties of Star Ocean Till the End of Time. I welcomed this change with open arms, because I just thought 4-character parties from the first 2 Star Ocean games worked best. Having one character dedicated to healing allowed you to basically do whatever you wanted with the other 3, and I liked using 3 fighter types. This game allows you to do that too, though I think magic is considerably more effective than it was in the previous games. And this was a really needed change, and I think it balanced the power of special attacks with the magic spells very effectively. Another new innovation of Star Ocean: The Last Hope's combat is the rush gauge. This is a new meter that builds as you do and take damage. When it reaches 100%, you can activate rush mode, which allows you to execute special rush combos that deal huge amounts of damage. I actually didn't find the need to use this very often, but it was a fun way to amplify my attacks in key moments. Lastly, there are now blindside attacks, which allow players to counterattack enemies targeting them. When you successfully use a blindside, your character will step behind the enemy and launch his or her own attack. You can do blindsides by pressing and holding the jump command while the player character is targeted. There is one problem though. If you hold the button too long, you'll get fatigued and it won't work at all. And honestly, this was pretty frustrating. It actually took quite a bit of practice to master, but if you get good at it, you can really avoid a lot of big hits and deal damage at the same time. I'll never complain about that in an RPG, that's for sure. Unlike all the other Star Ocean games, this one is a prequel and takes place before the events of the first title. It takes place on Earth in the year 2096, after the mass destruction of World War III, which completely devastated the planet. The 2 warring factions eventually organized a ceasefire and created a global governing body called the Greater United Nations in 2065. 31 years later, and you take control of Edge Maverick, a member of the Space Reconnaissance Force. As a crew member of the Calnus, his mission is to help the organization seek out other hospitable worlds to find a new home for humanity. If you've ever seen the movie Interstellar, there's definitely some of those vibes here. Soon after the game begins, everything gets thrown into chaos, and the Calnus is forced to crash land on a planet called Eos. You soon find out that 2 other ships, the Balena and the Dent-Delian, also landed there. Previously undetected life forms begin to attack though, and Edge is the only one of the Calnus crew that isn't seriously injured. He's then sent with Raimi, his second in command, to explore the planet and seek out the other 2 crashed ships. So yeah, the start of this game was about what you'd expect from a Star Ocean game. You're in a technologically driven world, but something goes awry right at the start. I will say though that I found the story in this one to be much heavier on the sci-fi elements than previous Star Ocean games. And this didn't bother me at all, because I actually thought of it as a natural evolution of the franchise because all the previous titles had some sci-fi stuff thrown in. So leaning more heavily on that aspect made sense and it worked for me. Star Ocean: The Last Hope features 9 playable characters, each of which has their own fighting style. My personal favorite was FaZe, a green-haired dude who's actually kind of a melee fighter and symbologist hybrid. He also has a lot of interesting storyline moments, and I really liked his cool and collected personality. As far as the characters go, there's plenty of party combinations to explore, and like all other Star Ocean games, you're always incentivized to test out new attacks and spells to find out which ones work best for you. That part of the game was just as fun here as it was in the other Star Ocean games. In fact, that's probably the highlight of the series for me. Star Ocean fans won't be surprised whatsoever to learn that Motoi Sakuraba served as the composer, bringing 71 new tracks forward for The Last Hope. Cosmic Voyagers kinda stood out to me as a main theme of sorts that frames the game. The main battle theme, Blood on the Keys, is one you'll be hearing a ton for obvious reasons, but was also really well made. My personal favorite track is called Brilliant Rose, which is the theme that plays during the final dungeon. It's a brilliant clash of piano, bass, and synthesizers. Definitely Sakuraba at his best. This is a solid soundtrack overall that really stands out among its counterparts, and it's definitely one of my favorite PS3 soundtracks. One of the best parts of Star Ocean: The Last Hope is that it's available on Steam right now. In fact, it's the only Star Ocean game available there outside of Star Ocean: The Divine Force. And this is the best way to play it today because it's actually a 4K HD remastered version with vastly improved graphics. Outside of that, I didn't really notice any added content from the original, but it's certainly visually pleasing and really holds up well. Also, I've noticed the price of this is often reduced during Steam sales, so put it on your watch list today. So yes, I do think Star Ocean: The Last Hope is one of the very best RPGs for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. In fact, it's one of the few RPGs on those platforms that resisted the urge to innovate to such an extent it became unrecognizable. That's to say it didn't morph into a totally action-oriented style and alienate existing fans. And there's a lot to be said for that. It's true that the Star Ocean series always included a hybrid action style, but it retained that same form and made the series so unique to RPG fans. It really should be commended for sticking to that formula for better or worse. Star Ocean: The Last Hope is also packed with bonus content in the form of item creation and bonus dungeons that you've come to expect from it. My only true critique of this game is that the AI for some of the characters is rough and can be frustrating at times. But you can work around this to some extent by tweaking the settings and doing things like turning certain spells off. I can forgive that part and applaud this one for its fun combat, solid characters, and interesting story. So do you have any memories of Star Ocean: The Last Hope? How do you think it ranks in terms of the rest of the series? Let me know in a comment below. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more retro gaming content. Special shout out to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members for supporting the channel. If you want early access to the videos I produce and other perks like they receive, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon patron or via the YouTube Join feature.